The mainstream media tells you rural America is dying. They show you drone footage of empty main streets, boarded-up hardware stores, and schools that closed 20 years ago. They call it a tragedy. Do not listen to them. What they call a dying town is actually the greatest real estate loophole left in this country. Think about it. When a town shrinks, the government shrinks with it. The building inspectors leave. The homeowner association Karens vanish. The property taxes collapse. What remains is absolute unregulated silence. Today we are hunting for the loneliest towns in the American Midwest. Places where $45,000 buys you acreage, an old structure, and a distance between neighbors that guarantees your absolute freedom. Let the masses fight over $500,000 paper-thin houses in the crowded suburbs. We are buying the ghost towns. Number 10. Rugby, North Dakota. There is a stone monument at the edge of Rugby that marks the exact geographic center of North America. Most days, no one is standing beside it. The population has been bleeding out for decades. The rail lines shifted, the farms consolidated, and the people left. In the winter, the wind moves across the plains without hitting a single obstacle until it hits your house. That level of isolation terrifies normal people. For us, it is a tactical advantage. The asset you are hunting for here is not a traditional house. You are looking for a red iron steel agricultural building on the outskirts of town, a metal barndominium. You can buy a quarter acre of dirt and a 2,000 square foot steel shell for $5,000. But you cannot survive a North Dakota winter in a bare metal box. You must master insulation. Do not use fiberglass bats. The condensation on the cold steel will turn fiberglass into a heavy, moldy sponge in one season. You must hire a contractor to spray 3 inches of closed-cell polyurethane foam directly onto the interior corrugated steel. Closed-cell foam acts as a 100% vapor barrier and adds massive structural rigidity to the building. It will cost you about $4,500. Once that cures, the building is practically airtight. To heat it, you do not rely on a fragile electric grid. You install a 5,000-watt diesel parking heater, the kind they use in semi-trucks, vented straight out the wall. You can heat that entire massive space on a few gallons of off-road diesel a week. You are warm, you are hidden, and the closest neighbor is a mile down a snow-drifted road. Number 9. Scenic, South Dakota. In 2011, the entire town of Scenic was listed for sale on the internet for $7,900. A bar, a dance hall, a jail, and empty land. The population is essentially zero. It sits on the edge of the Badlands, bleached by the sun and entirely forgotten by time. You do not want to buy the town. You want to buy the unrestricted, unincorporated dirt surrounding it. You can pick up 10 acres of raw, spectacular, desolate land for $15,000. There are no building codes. You can drop 3 shipping containers on the dirt, weld a massive steel roof over the top of them, and call it a compound. But the ultimate survival barrier in Scenic is water. You are in the high desert. You cannot rely on rain catchment. You must drill a deep well. This is where you separate the men from the boys. You will need to drill roughly 300 feet down through shale and clay to hit a reliable aquifer. At $45 a foot for drilling and PVC casing, you are looking at a $1,350 invoice. Do not cheap out and run it on a standard alternating current well pump. You buy a direct current submersible solar well pump. You wire it directly to 3 400-watt solar panels mounted on a steel pole. When the sun shines, water pumps directly into a 1,000-gallon black poly tank. Gravity feeds it to your containers. You have just spent $35,000 total to build an off-grid fortress in a place so empty, the government does not even bother to send a tax assessor. Number 8. Amboy, Minnesota. At its peak in the early 1900s, Amboy was a booming dairy town with 2 banks and a hotel. Today, the banks are gone, the hotel is gone, and the main street has gaps where buildings used to stand like missing teeth. You can drive through Amboy on a Tuesday afternoon and not see another human being for 30 minutes. That is not abandonment, that is peace. The asset here is the legacy farmstead. Because the dairy industry consolidated, there are dozens of old, small farm parcels sitting empty. You are looking for a property with a concrete block barn or a concrete stave silo. You can secure 5 acres and a structurally sound concrete outbuilding for $65,000. The wooden roof of that barn is probably rotting. Let it rot. You are going to rip off those decaying wooden trusses with a rented telehandler. You are going to order custom-cut 14-gauge galvanized steel purlins and heavy-duty 26-gauge ribbed metal roofing panels. You bolt those steel purlins directly to the top of the concrete block walls using wedge anchors and a rotary hammer drill. You screw the metal sheets down with neoprene washer screws so it never leaks. For $6,000 in materials and a month of hard labor, you have converted a decaying dairy barn into an indestructible fireproof workshop and living space. You have acres of rich, dark Midwestern topsoil. You can grow your own food, hunt your own land, and listen to the wind move through the cornfields instead of listening to sirens in the city. Number 7. Cairo, Nebraska. Cairo is a town of 700 people sitting at the intersection of two empty county roads. The grain elevator is the tallest thing on the horizon. The economic gravity has shifted 30 miles away, leaving Cairo in a state of suspended animation. But Cairo sits on top of the greatest hidden asset in North America, the Ogallala Aquifer. While the American West burns and fights over every drop of Colorado River water, Cairo is floating on an ocean of fresh, pristine groundwater. You can buy a 1940s farmhouse here on an acre of land for $75,000. The house will need cosmetic work, but the water rights are grandfathered in. If the house has been sitting empty, the submersible well pump is likely seized up from calcium buildup. You do not need to call a plumber who will charge you $1,500. You locate the well casing in the yard. You use a heavy-duty T-handle tool to unscrew the pitless adapter underground. You physically pull the 1-inch poly pipe and the dead pump out of the ground by hand. It is heavy, wet, filthy work. You cut the old pump off. You splice the wires of a new $800 Grundfos stainless steel pump using heat-shrink waterproof butt connectors. You lower it back down the casing, lock it into the pitless adapter, and flip the breaker. Instant, unlimited, unmetered water. You pair that with a simple reverse osmosis filter under the kitchen sink, and you have better water security than billionaires living in Los Angeles. The town is quiet. Nothing is broken. Nothing is chaotic. It is just a place that adjusted to a scale its founders never planned for. And that scale is perfect for a man who wants to be left alone. Number 6. McIntosh, Minnesota. McIntosh is in the Red River Valley, founded by Scandinavian immigrants who were tough enough to survive the brutal, flat, featureless plains. The last school closed years ago. When a town loses its school, the young families leave. What remains are the old-timers and the empty houses. In the winter, when the temperature drops to 20 below zero and the streetlights come on along a half-empty main street, the distance between neighbors feels massive. This is a town that has learned to function at a smaller scale. You are buying a heavy timber homestead here for $55,000. These older homes have basements built with massive stone foundations. But your vulnerability here is the grid. If the power goes out in a blizzard, the house will freeze solid in 12 hours. You must install a secondary off-grid heating source. You buy a heavy cast-iron wood stove. Do not vent it out the window like an amateur. You must install Class A double-wall insulated stainless steel chimney pipe straight up through the ceiling and the roof. The pipe alone will cost you $1,200, but it prevents the extreme heat of the exhaust from catching your wooden roof framing on fire. You cut the hole, frame the support box, run the pipe, and seal the roof flashing with extreme weather silicone. You spend your summers cutting and splitting local ash and oak firewood. When the winter storms hit, and the rest of the country is panicking over rolling blackouts, you are sitting in your living room in a t-shirt, watching the snow bury a town that the rest of the world already forgot. Number 5. Gackle, North Dakota. In south-central North Dakota, surrounded by miles of open farmland, sits Gackle. The population hovers around 300. The town was built for wheat fields and railroads. The rail traffic slowed down. The farms consolidated into massive corporate operations, and the young people fled to the cities. The streets feel too wide. The storefronts close early. On a windy afternoon, the prairie is literally louder than the town. But Gackle is not dead. It is just empty. And in that emptiness, you find the Quonset Hut, the agricultural steel arch building. You can buy a half-acre lot with a massive 40-foot by 60-foot steel Quonset Hut for $4,000. It looks like a military hangar. It is aerodynamically perfect for deflecting the 70-mile-per-hour Dakota winds, but it is an echoing metal icebox. You are going to convert it into a residential bunker. You do not try to frame traditional square walls against a curved steel ceiling. You frame your interior living space as a freestanding wooden box entirely inside the steel shell. You leave a 2-inch air gap between your wooden roof joists and the steel arch. Then you hire a rig to spray 4 inches of closed-cell foam over your entire interior wooden box. You have just built a thermos inside a steel wind deflector. To heat this massive space, you do not use a heat pump. You install a $2,500 waste oil heater. You go to the local heavy equipment mechanics and tractor repair shops. You offer to take their used motor oil and transmission fluid for free. They will gladly give it to you to avoid disposal fees. You pump that black dirty oil through a 10-micron heated filter assembly directly into your burner. It burns at roughly 14,000 BTU. You are heating a 2,400 square foot steel bunker through a North Dakota winter for absolutely $0 a month. You have hijacked the waste stream of the agricultural industry to keep your family warm. Number 4. Beatrice, Nebraska. Beatrice was a massive regional hub in the 1960s. It had department stores, a movie house, and a massive rail depot. Today, the population is flat, but the economy is hollowed out. The department stores were gutted by a Walmart on the highway. The downtown storefronts cycle between short-lived businesses and vacant, dusty windows. This is where you execute the commercial zoning loophole. You are not buying a house with a lawn. You are buying an abandoned 1920s commercial brick storefront on Main Street for $55,000. It has 14-foot tin ceilings, massive plate glass windows, and 0 setbacks. You park your truck inside the building. But the enemy of commercial buildings is the flat roof. If it has been sitting empty, the old tar and gravel roof is leaking. Commercial roofers will quote you $2,000 to fix it. You tell them to go away. You are going to install an EPDM rubber membrane roof yourself. You buy 45 mil black EPDM rubber on a 20-foot wide roll. You tear off the rotting tar paper. You screw down 2-inch rigid poly-iso insulation boards directly to the wooden roof deck using heavy-duty roofing screws and 3-inch steel plates. You sweep the boards perfectly clean. You pour out 5-gallon buckets of water-based bonding adhesive and roll it out thick. You and 2 friends drag that massive heavy sheet of black rubber over the wet glue. You take a heavy push broom and sweep every single air bubble out toward the edges. You seal the parapet walls with 6-inch uncured flashing tape and lap sealant. It will cost you $4,500 in materials and a weekend of backbreaking labor on a hot roof. But when you are done, you have a 3,000 square foot brick fortress. No grass to cut, no homeowner association. You pull down the metal security grates over the front windows, and you live completely undetected in the hollowed-out shell of the 20th century. Number 3. Picher, Oklahoma. Picher did not just fade away. It was condemned. From the 1910s to the 1960s, this was a massive lead and zinc mining hub. The mining companies pulled the metal out, helped win 2 world wars, and left behind mountains of toxic, crushed mining waste called chat piles. The lead dust poisoned the ground. The federal government bought out the town, demolished the houses, and erased Picher from the map. It is a Superfund site. You cannot legally live in the exact center of Picher, but you can buy unrestricted dirt on the absolute fringe, in the surrounding forgotten zones of Ottawa County, for $1,000 an acre. Why would you do this? Because it is the ultimate repellent. Nobody wants to be there. The government abandoned it. The developers are terrified of it. It is a dead zone. You buy 5 acres of fringe land and you park an off-grid heavy-duty fifth-wheel trailer on a concrete pad. Your only mortal threat is the groundwater. You absolutely never drill a well here. Heavy metal contamination will destroy your nervous system. You must build a massive closed-loop rainwater catchment system. You build a 30-foot by 30-foot freestanding steel pole barn roof just to catch rain. You run commercial 6-inch aluminum gutters. The rain flows down into a first flush diverter, which automatically dumps the first 10 gallons of dirty, dust-covered water onto the ground. The clean water then routes into 2 2,500-gallon black high-density polyethylene cisterns. Black plastic stops algae growth because it blocks the sunlight. You pump that water into your trailer using a 12-volt demand pump, but you do not drink it yet. You push it through a 5-stage filtration wall, a 20-micron spin-down sediment filter, a 5-micron carbon block, a dedicated heavy metal ion exchange resin filter, designed specifically to bind lead, and finally a 55-watt ultraviolet light tube to sterilize any bacteria. You test the water with a digital meter. You control the chemistry of your own survival. You are living safely on the edge of a toxic scar, in a place so forgotten that the rest of the world pretends it no longer exists. Number 2. Monowi, Nebraska. The population of Monowi is exactly 1 point. A woman named Elsie is the mayor, the clerk, and the sole resident. She grants herself a liquor license for the local tavern and pays taxes to herself. Monowi is the logical endpoint of rural depopulation. But you are not moving to Monowi to be the second resident. You are hunting for the hundreds of micro-villages just like it across the northern plains. Places where the population is 12 or 15. Where the municipal infrastructure completely collapsed decades ago. You can buy an old house on 4 city lots for $2,000. but you have no city sewer, and the county will not approve a traditional $15,000 septic system because the lot sizes are too small and the soil percolation is terrible. You bypass the system entirely. You build a dry composting humanure system. You do not buy a cheap $1,000 plastic bucket from an RV catalog. You build an outdoor dual-chamber cinder block composting vault. You separate the liquids from the solids at the source using a urine-diverting toilet seat. The solids drop into the concrete vault below. You cover it with a scoop of dry hardwood sawdust after every use. The carbon in the sawdust binds with the nitrogen in the waste, sparking an aerobic thermophilic reaction. The pile literally heats up to 130 degrees, killing all human pathogens. To guarantee zero smell inside your house, you install a 12-volt computer cooling fan inside a 4-inch PVC vent pipe. It runs 24 hours a day on a tiny 50-watt solar panel, creating constant negative air pressure. The air is always being sucked down the toilet and vented outside. It costs you $600 in concrete blocks, pipe, and fans. You completely eliminate black water. You produce zero toxic sewage. You have permanently severed your reliance on municipal waste management, and the local inspector does not even know what to look for. You are a sovereign entity. Number 1. Ludlow, Illinois. Ludlow sits in the dead center of the most productive agricultural land in the world. The roads are laser straight. The fields stretch to the horizon. There was no disaster here. No mine collapse. No tornado. Just the slow, quiet process of people driving 20 minutes to Champaign instead of shopping locally. The town slowly bled to death by convenience. The population is under 300. The grass is mowed. The streets are clean. And nothing happens. That is the perfect environment for a fortress. You buy a 1910 heavy timber farmhouse for $8,000. Your biggest vulnerability in a town this small is the power grid. When the ice storms hit Illinois and the transmission lines snap, a town of 300 people is at the absolute bottom of the utility company repair list. You will freeze in the dark for 2 weeks. You must build a massive 48-volt off-grid solar architecture. You do not use cheap 12-volt lead-acid car batteries that die in 3 years. You build a server rack battery bank. You buy 3 100-amp-hour 48-volt lithium iron phosphate server rack batteries. They cost $1,500 each. They are rated for 6,000 deep discharge cycles. That is a 15-year lifespan. You mount them in a steel network cabinet in the basement. You wire them in parallel using massive 4-tock pure copper welding cable. You must use a 16-ton hydraulic crimping tool to attach the copper heavy-duty ring terminals and seal them with adhesive-lined heat-shrink tubing. Loose connections will melt and start a fire. You run that massive direct current power into an 8,000-watt pure sine wave split-phase inverter. Split-phase means it produces 2 120-volt lines, giving you true 240-volt power. You can run your deep freezer, your well pump, and a 220-volt arc welder simultaneously. You mount 5,000 watts of used cracked glass solar panels on a ground mount in your massive backyard. You bought those panels used for $50 each from a commercial solar farm upgrade. The sun comes up, your lithium bank charges, and you have the exact same electrical capacity as a house in the Chicago suburbs. Except you pay $0 in delivery fees, $0 in grid taxes, and $0 in state energy mandates. You sit in your 100-year-old house in a town that faded into silence. The power grid goes down, the cities panic, and your lights do not even flicker. This is the end game. You did not just buy a house. You bought your way out of the system.